Folks, we are back on the Boxing Lab, presented by Celsius Live Fit Essential Energy. My name is Wade Plemons, and today we have an assortment of guests and quite frankly, a brand new guest to the show. Let me introduce everybody. To my left is the Director of Boxing at MVP, Mike Leonardi, and our newest debut on the Boxing Lab, and right here at Most Valuable Prospects, you'll see that this Saturday. It is the former unified light heavyweight champion, the left hand that put fear into all men, and of course the Magic Man. It is Antonio Tarver. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me, man. Great to be in Orlando. Orlando is starting to be a hub for boxing, and I'm excited. Hometown on the map.
Your stomping grounds, man. Antonio, I want to go to you first because we're all excited to have you, especially for Saturday. But today here on the Boxing Lab, I'm excited to have you to talk about this fight that MVP has coming up, one put together by the Director of Boxing here. It's Jake Paul and Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. It goes down June 28th, and I just want to know your initial thoughts on this fight.
Initially, I think it's a big fight. I think it really is going to show where Jake Paul is at right now. He's fighting an ex-champion, a guy that has a historical last name. We know the genetics of the Chavez family. So, I mean, this is a big show. Yeah. And I'm excited about it, I really am.
Mike, when you're making a fight of this magnitude for Jake Paul, a lot of people have asked, where is he going? What's his trajectory in the sport? And it's kind of a unique situation, obviously. So I want to ask you, what goes into making a fight like this and really shaping a career like Jake is on?
I mean, there's a lot that goes into it, right? I mean, we've seen kind of all the different permutations of Jake's fights now, starting with influencers, pro athletes, MMA fighters, who are elite combat athletes, professional boxers that are kind of, lesser names. Obviously, Mike Tyson is in his own category entirely.
Right.
And now Chavez Jr. So obviously, it's the second former world champion he's faced, but Julio is a lot closer in age and closer to his prime than Mike, and he definitely has his daddy's chin. So, it's a certain, it's a maturation process, right? Yeah. It's getting Jake experience. Jake had technically one amateur fight, which was against an influencer, so it's not even like
he had no amateur career.
Exactly, exactly. It's not what you or I would consider an amateur career. So he's learning on the job. And the thing, I've said it on this show before, but the thing that people, I think they've come around to it now, but Jake's a tremendous athlete. People don't realize that. It's a kid that does YouTube or he does Vine or he's on social media. So you don't think athlete, you don't think college level athlete, which Jake is and was. So it's just getting him that experience, right? Yeah. And now we're at an inflection point where it's like Jake wants to be cruiserweight champion of the world. That's his goal.
Lofty.
So I was gonna say, what are you thinking, Antonio?
Hey, it's reachable if he continue to work like he's working, and with a great guy like this moving him correctly, it can be done. You know what I'm saying? It's just when he get that opportunity, what is he gonna do then?
Right.
Getting there is not the.
Do you think
what
this
he's gonna
is
do?
The opportunity fight? Is that what you look at Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. as? Because we talked about it, Mike, and you've been pretty candid about it. You're moving him and building him through the experience he needs to get to that goal. And this is, I look at this fight as one of those to be like, okay, this is a real guy, former world champion, not, Mike Tyson's age, and a guy that still is relatively close to, what he was, at least on paper. So is that this fight? The one that's like, this is the real one. This is the one that's going to point to where you're at now and where you can potentially go.
I think it is, for sure. And there's one thing that maybe we haven't talked about. I'm really curious, Antonio, your thoughts on this. Jake is mentally extremely strong.
Okay.
You and I both know, everyone, there's super talented boxers that come around that don't have the mental.
Right.
There's guys that are world beaters in the gym. They beat up every world champion they're in the ring with, right?
Right.
But they get in the fight and it's like, where did the guy from last week go? Where did he go? Jake has always had that. And it's far exceeded his boxing experience. So now that the experience is starting to catch up to that, he's in my mind. I mean, how important is that? Because in my mind, he's 2 steps ahead of the other guys with 10, 12, 13 pro fights, because he just has that. He was born with that. Whatever that is.
That mental strength.
Yeah.
That goes a long way in boxing because we're going to get challenged in ways we've never been challenged before. And I just believe this fight right here will really give us an indication of where both of these fighters at. Chavez coming back knows that he can only, if he get it right one night, it can change everything for him.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
He's back.
Exactly. And so that is going to give this veteran that opportunity to go back to that drawing board and get it right. Bring the right attitude, bring the right hunger to this fight. He might be able to have the biggest upset that we could think of. And then when you look at Paul, beating a ex-world champion, a guy with a name like that, is how he beat him. Did he control him throughout? Did he box him? And then did he knock him out? You know what I mean? So the action in that fight is going to tell us a lot also, how both of these guys handled themselves.
I agree. We look at the fight and, you talked about it, Antonio. It's Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. going to have to answer a lot of questions, right? A lot of questions about, does he still have what he did? And also questions about moving up in weight. This is a guy that fought at 160, won a belt at 160 pounds, now fighting at 200. You had some experience with that. Obviously spent most of your career at light heavyweight, but toward the end did move up a little. Talk to me about some of the challenges there and maybe some of the benefits of him moving up in weight.
Well, I want to know, is that weight coming on because, just laying off and not doing anything, or is he just getting bigger and stronger? You know what I mean? That weight could be a deterrence if it's not put on right. If it's muscle, is it muscle? Is it just, good weight? I think that'll determine how well Chavez performs.
Yeah.
Does it change how you approach the fight, the pacing of the fight? Does it change your game plan at all, fighting at a higher weight than you used to?
Well, he definitely is not going to be as mobile. You know what I mean? He's not going to be using his feet as much. So that could mean that he's coming to bring the power. He's coming to stay there and be strong right inside. We don't know. You know what I mean? I think Chavez's best chance is to stay close because I think Jake has, more mobility than him at this time. So this fight can go either way. How it plays out is what everyone's going to be tuning in for.
I'm interested now because you're laying out all the potential things that could happen. I want to know what you think happens though, Antonio. You've seen Jake now for a good bit. I know that you study everybody. What do you think he brings to this, and do you think it's more Jake's fight to win or lose, or is Julio got something that, again, people are going to be surprised by?
No, I think it's Jake fights to lose because when you fight Mike and beat Mike, that type of confidence, it brews throughout the training camp and leading up to the fight. So when you look at Mike Tyson and you say, now I got to fight Chavez, in his mind, he feel like, I'm right where I need to be and I can make a statement in this fight. And what a statement it will mean for Jake Paul to look dominant against a guy like Chavez.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, a statement to potentially that co-main event. You have Zora Ramirez and Dorticos in the co-main event.
That's such a fun fight, right?
It's a fun fight, and it's also, listen,
that's going to be a war, bro.
It gets lost a little bit because Jake and Chavez are such big names. But, man, Dorticos he's 39 as well. But he's not a guy that relied on reflexes, relied on movement. He's a guy that walks across the ring and punches you in the mouth. And his power is out of this world. Like, he's one of the best natural punchers to come along in the last 20 years. Now you have Sordo, who started at 68, but has all the craft and ability, and he's had some weight trouble, but he's a big guy. I think that's just probably age that caused that, but he went 175, now 200. I mean, and he's just a tremendous technical fighter who's also aggressive. He's a sharpshooter. I mean, that's like a can't miss fight, right? And Dorticos is, man, I just love watching a guy fight because it's like, you better knock me out because I'm gonna knock you out,
right? Those got to be some of the toughest dudes to fight, though, too, Antonio. I assume you've had some of those guys, and in some cases you've been that guy. Like, I'm going to knock you out. Like, how tough is it when you have a puncher in front of you that seemingly is okay with, like, all right, let's go to
Taking
war.
a shot.
Yeah, like you could be all this skilled, technical, whatever you are, but I'm gonna be right here the entire night. If you don't put me down, I'm still going. How tough are those guys?
They're very tough. You got to meet them though.
Yeah.
You know, you got to meet them with your heart. Let them know that we both tough. You think you tougher than me? Yeah, I had to prove that a couple times against a guy like Glenn Johnson.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
On
Road warrior.
paper, this guy was tough.
Yeah.
But I had to really fight him with my heart.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To back him down and to stop him. Because if I just wanted to use the technique, that wasn't going to stop Glenn Johnson.
Not gonna
you know
slow
what I
him
mean?
down.
You got to beat him head on, heart for heart.
When
and I
do
had to
you-
fight him like that in the last fight.
When do you like, as a fighter, because I'm so interested in you talking about that, when as a fighter do you realize you got that heart? Because we talked about it here. Some guys look like world beaters in the gym and get in there, and someone that isn't going away is in front of them, and they figure out real quickly, I don't know if I got this.
At a certain point, the other guy's good too.
Right. You
know,
got to at some
it's-
point. you're
everyone's the best guy
skill
from
for
their
skill,
city
it's
or
right
state
there.
or
Right.
country or
When
whatever.
did you figure, like, for you, when was there a moment you went,
You know
I
what?
got that?
You know what? It's like in the amateurs, I started out, I won the Florida state tournament. I went to the regionals, I won the regionals. I went to the nationals, I won the nationals. So it was like, I knew in my heart, you know, when I was training, when I say I'm going to the Olympics, I knew in my heart, bro, I had to put that work in and I had to be focused. But I always was one of those guys that made goals and reached those goals. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes it was 2-3 years down the road, but I had to stay consistent to get there. And so that was one of those things I learned, man. You just got to believe in yourself. And sometime when you're tested, when your will is tested, that's when you got to stand up. You know?
Speaking of an all-time great story, obviously, with you, Antonio, and you guys have just now brought on an all-time great women's fighter leading into July 11th. Obviously, we're talking Amanda Serrano, Katie Taylor, but new acquisition and MVP, Holly Holm, the preacher's daughter. Talk to me about that acquisition, Mike, and how important it is to you guys to bring Holly in.
Man, I mean, Holly's a legend of not just our sport, but combat sports in general.
Yeah.
I mean, she's the most successful, broadly speaking, probably women's combat sport athlete there is.
Ever.
I mean, even if you compare her to men, I mean, there's no UFC boxing world champions. There's no Super Bowl World Series world champions.
You're not seeing it.
Like Holly Holm is in a totally different level from almost everybody. And she's a superstar, and it's like, when we had the opportunity, it's just, it's so exciting for us. We do so much with women's boxing. To be able to bring someone like that in, it's like such a massive stamp of approval of everything we're doing at MVP. And it's just, man, she kind of stole the show at the press conference, right? All the media was like, "What? Holly Holm is
Out of
back
nowhere.
and she's boxing."
Awesome.
It was a great
so-
reveal. It was a great
yeah.
reveal. I mean, Antonio, you again, just speaking as a legend yourself, you've seen Holly dominate boxing, and I was young. I didn't get to really understand how much of a dominant force she was in boxing. I got to see her come in and, in Australia head kick Ronda Rousey, and that was insane. But she has dominated everywhere. What kind of mentality does that take?
GOAT mentality, bro.
Yeah.
GOAT mentality. She's been at this a long, long time. She's grown into the sport.
Yeah.
You feel me? Been in it since she was a young lady
Yeah.
until now. So that experience is second to none. And any of these young ladies, fighters, get next to Holly, learn something. You know what I'm saying? Conversate with her. She might have a gym for you. You know what I mean? But I just want to say, man, what you guys are doing at MVP, Mike, for ladies boxing, man,
Crazy.
rejuvenated the sport. And that's big, man. Any female, that really wants to grow and build, they got to come see MVP.
Look, I mean, not even low key. It's high key now.
It's high key.
Straight up high
For
key.
real.
Like you're seeing a complete, like you said, revitalization of it. Like, Mike, you guys have. It seems like every week there's a new world level, boxer.
Man, we have a few more we haven't even
I'm
announced
saying,
yet.
you look at that smile, like he's like, you think you got it? What's this? Ace out the sleeve. It's crazy. And speaking of that, we have this July 11th card, and one of the guys in the back told me before we started rolling that we may be encroaching on record status for world championships or world championship fighters on one card.
Right.
Talk to me about that.
And world titles.
You're right.
We're fact checking this, but it doesn't seem like any other event is close.
Yeah.
So have undisputed in the main event, undisputed in the co-main event. Unification.
Crazy.
Bout after title bout.
Just
It's
gold.
unbelievable.
They should call it the gold card. That's literally like we're dancing for gold on July 11th. Like again, the event itself sells with Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor. Why was it so important for you guys to go, okay, we know that sells, but
Right.
here's the rest of this, because it isn't just about two women's fighters. Why was that so important?
Well, because it's the ultimate tent pole for everything we're doing in women's boxing, right? Because to your point, you have Katie and Amanda, and that's something we have to talk about. We need your take on that.
Yes,
but
the trilogy, the rubber match.
Right, but they've fought twice now. Once is a main event. Nobody even remembers who was on that undercard the first time.
Because it was such a good fight that your mind immediately goes there.
And then very strategically, we put them as the co-main event for Paul Tyson because we knew it was going to be, nobody expected it to do quite the numbers it did, but we knew it was going to be the most watched boxing event in a long, long time. So that makes Taylor Serrano too the second most watched boxing event in a long, long time.
Yeah.
And you can't put Katie and Amanda in the ring and not have them perform, So now we get to carry some of that from November to July and put all these great women, all these great fights in, it's a lot of, like we signed Ellie Scottney.
Yeah.
Ellie, who do you want to fight? I want to fight Mercado. Like, oh, that's a good fight. Yeah, some people think she's better than me, so get Mercado. So we got Mercado.
Nice,
you know what I mean?
Nice.
We have Shade Shagreen and Savannah Marshall.
Bang.
Which is like it's a banger. You know what I mean? It's like just man, it's such a good card. So the thought process is you have this main event that everyone's going to want to watch. Yeah. All boxing fans are going to want to watch. A lot of general sports fans are going to want to watch because they saw the last one. Mm-hmm. And then they get to see Alicia Baumgartner, right? They get to see Marshall and Green. They get to see Ellie Scottney and Mercado. They get to see, and the list goes on. So the more eyes you can attract to those women and you see how great those women are and how great those fights are going to be, it just helps elevate the sport. And I've probably said this on this podcast before, but people don't realize we're only 4 Olympic cycles into women's boxing being included.
Yeah.
20 years ago, there was nowhere to go for amateur women. Right? It's like, well, you fight a few amateur fights, and if you want, you turn pro. There was no, and I mean that's the pinnacle of amateur boxing. That's how fighters get good. You get good wanting to go to the Olympics and competing in the Olympics and the World Championships. So now women's boxing has all that, and so we're just trying to build the infrastructure around it because now the talent's there. And every 4 years, every Olympics, the talent's just getting better and better in women's boxing.
All right, Antonio, you heard him. He wants your take on Serrano Taylor 3. How do you see it going down?
This is the third fight, and both of those fights were so close. I'm really looking forward to seeing which one of these fighters can have a little bit of separation. And I think it's the fighter that truly hone in on their technique, stay technical rather than just start fighting so soon. And I think once we see that, I think whoever does that is going to have a chance to win this fight. And the trilogy.
The trilogy.
You know what I mean? That's what
we're seeing how good Antonio is at speaking at hypotheticals.
He walks that line, man. It's so crazy.
Play in the middle, man.
What's your prediction? He's like, let me tell you how both fighters. It's a good way to go about it. This is why he's a pro's pro, man. Like, he's better at this because I was going to be like, listen, I'm taking Amanda. I don't care what you say. I'm taking Amanda. I thought Amanda won the second fight. And again, I think that's a great point you make, though, because they both have started, and Amanda has started very quickly in both fights. Like, that's just, in 2-minute rounds, I get it. You kind of have to, right? But at the same time, Amanda throws so many punches that maybe some of that work gets lost sometimes because you look at it as just volume or shoe shining, but she's doing damage in there. I mean, the most damage that was landed in that first fight, outside of some headbutts, but outside of that, the most damage was Amanda landing a nasty shot early and almost knocking her out. Like, that was the biggest shot of the fight. Huge shot. It's just a matter of carrying that throughout those later rounds where Katie Taylor starts to build and starts to really get back into the fight. Listen, this is just personal. For me, I think I'm going Amanda Serrano in the third fight. I think what a way it would be to end off the trilogy. And whatever, I mean, what else does Amanda really have left to do in the sport? Whatever she wants, really, but be a storied career with a punctuation, I think.
Absolutely, man. It's such an interesting style clash because Amanda had she was at pre-Olympic, she had 9 amateur fights. She's like, I don't want New York Golden Gloves. I'm gonna go turn pro because that's what there was.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot beyond that. And then Katie being an Olympic gold medalist, a lot less amateur experience, but probably 10, 15 times more amateur fights than Amanda did. And it's, and Amanda fights in that kind of buzzsaw,
she's a bull,
grinding,
she's
explosive pro style. I mean, I call Amanda, she's like female Manny Pacquiao.
Cute face, but a monster.
Absolutely.
And then Katie, Katie wants to box because, she's got that Olympic pedigree. She wants to box, but she likes to fight, and she stops and plants her feet and trades and then moves. And man, it's just such a great style match.
You can do it 100 times, and it's a fantastic fight every time.
Yeah.
Both of these ladies love to fight, but at that time when they're
just in
standing there
different ways.
just banging, you don't know who's winning the fight. And I think that it was going on a little bit too much.
True.
That's why I say if somebody
Technique
can get off
first,
on that jab, show some separation,
Yeah.
show a little control, I think the judges will lean toward that fighter.
Gentlemen, thinking about this trilogy fight on July 11th, Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano. Antonio, you've been in a pretty popular trilogy of your own. Talk to me about the mindset of just trilogy fights in general and yours with, the great Roy Jones.
Now you got to be locked in,
Actually, before I start, you got any complaints?
No excuses either.
No excuses or complaints.
No, you got to really go there, man. You got to really lock in.
You're right.
And take your mind on a trip.
Yeah.
It was one of the biggest moments in my life. I knew I was fighting a Hall of Famer, legendary fighter who was beloved, and so that was the thing with me having to overcome.
Yeah.
But I was at my best. I reached that pinnacle that only I, could never thought I could reach. And it was because I had the biggest challenge in front of me. And so these two ladies, either one of these ladies I know wants to be the victor over the trilogy. And that's what's going to be for the winner of this fight. They're really going to go down in history, you know what I'm saying, as the person that defeated their greatest challenge.
Yeah.
I like Serrano, man. It's just that, I think the way she gets it is a little bit different. I think she boxes her way to the decision instead of fighting her way through it. I think she can outsmart her a little bit, be 2 or 3 steps ahead of Taylor. That might give her the best chance to win instead of trying to break that door down. You know what I mean? Finesse. I think that'll serve her well.
What's that like? So most people thought, especially the second fight, but Amanda won.
Yes.
Your fight with Roy, there was a lot of debate. Roy got the decision. Obviously, second and third fights were all you. But that first fight, you had to feel like you won the fight. You didn't get the decision. How did that change your mindset and your preparation from fight 1 to 2? Because Amanda's kind of in that same situation, fight 2 to 3.
I really felt like if I couldn't win that decision, I had to do something more.
Had to knock him out.
I had to knock him out. So that was my approach in the rematch. I don't think if I would have won 12 straight rounds, they was gonna give it to me.
Right.
That was Roy Jones. That's just the way it was. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So, but man, I'm glad it was that way because I went so deep inside myself and I became the fighter that, I didn't even know I was. You know what I mean? So sometime in challenges, you become something that you didn't even think you could become.
Man, that's such an iconic moment too. I'm, growing up, I was a massive Roy Jones fan, and when you said that, I was just like,
everybody's jaw dropped, and even
you got excuses tonight,
you
Roy.
look at Roy, and Roy was like, I think everybody was like, that moment. Oh man, this is about to be a different fight.
Dude, it's like something out of a movie. I don't know where you came up with that, how you came up with that.
Great.
It's like out of a movie.
It's just in the moment, though, right?
After I said that, bro, I'm like, what now?
You can't lose.
Hey, man, talk about putting yourself behind the eight
sure.
ball.
Oh my God.
But I needed that pressure, bro.
Yeah.
And like I said, I look back at it, I must have been crazy, you know what I mean? When I think about it, bro. But sometimes you just gotta trust, man. And I trusted everything that I worked for and committed to, man. And it happened.
Who's a fight on that card that's going to steal the show? I mean, the main event could, quite frankly, like it always has, steal the show. But what's another fight to you, Mike, that steals the show on that card?
I mean, Shadaysha Green and Savannah Marshall is, it's so rare to have two women with that kind of punching power and those kind of knockout ratios where almost every fight they win is by knockout. And they both are, Savannah's tall and rangy, Shadaysha's strong, it's a great fight.
I think it's a great fight to really, for obviously we know what we get out of Savannah Marshall. I think for Shadaysha Green, this is a interesting fight for her because I think this is going to bring the best that we've seen out of her. Wherein I've seen, I've called a ton of her fights. I've been there in the front row for a lot of her fights. Shadaysha, I think, has needed this challenge to really sell to herself and what she's going to do going forward. That this is the time. We saw the Cruz Dezern fight, and I think that obviously a little bit of a disappointing night for her there. I think this is one of those where, okay, that was not your best night, but you have another opportunity against a world level talent to really come out and show people why MVP invested in you early. Right? Why she was one of the first fighters MVP signed, especially on the women's side. So I'm excited for that one. That one's going to be a fun one. Let's talk about why we're here this week. Saturday, Most Valuable Prospects 13. I feel like it's my baby now. I've been here all 13 of these fights, and it's growing up right in front of my eyes. But another nod to this historic run you're making in women's boxing. Talk to me about this main event and why it's so important.
Man, just tremendous fight. Ferrer and Ferrer.
Ferrer versus Ferrer.
So I'm gonna say Beatrice and Maria.
It's gonna be. We're gonna have to get this in our head, Antonio. I'm fighting. Right. We're gonna Ferrer with a right hand. Wow, Ferrer. Beatrice and Maria.
Antonio's gonna say Ferrer is gonna win the fight.
That's how he walks it.
Can't miss.
There you go.
But I mean, Beatrice is, they call her the Beast for a reason, right? And two-time.
That's a nickname right there, the Beast.
Two-time Olympic medalist. Yep. IBF world champion, defending world champion, undefeated. She's a special fighter. She's a special fighter, and I think this is a great one for Antonio. She was Olympian, went pro, went back to the Olympics, back to pro. How difficult would that be? Especially fighting at the world championship level.
It's going to be a lot. It's going to be difficult because the amateur game is so much faster. Right. As from the pro game, you got time. Right. Rounds and rounds. Even though it's only 2 minutes,
it's still 10 rounds.
It gives her a lot of experience, bro. Yeah. It just gives her a lot of experience over these ladies when you look at Olympic. You know what I mean? And then you have to come back, and a lot of times these pros aren't even more experienced than the Olympians.
Sure.
So it's like she's having her cake and eating it too, basically.
Come on.
You know what I mean?
That.
So that's how I see it. It can only help her become a more complete fighter. Yeah. She's facing a girl that's undefeated. And sometimes that is the last thing to go. But I just think amateur pedigree sets these two women apart.
Yeah, I agree.
I really do.
Mike, obviously the Brazilian influence on this card is pretty palpable.
Yeah.
What was the thinking behind, bringing a lot? Is it just a nod to Ferrer in the main event, or is there a bigger picture idea with including more of the Brazilian influence on this card?
So, both. So, we had the Beatrice fight, Ferrer and Ferrer. Orlando has a substantial Brazilian population, so we built around that, right? And it's like, okay, well, we have a two-time Olympic medalist from a country that doesn't produce a lot of. They have great amateur boxers. They don't produce a lot of top pro boxers.
Yeah,
it's like,
and it's very interesting. It's a fighting nation too, right?
Yeah.
You see it, obviously a massive jiu-jitsu nation. We know that. Kickboxing, massive. But you never, I mean, I guess Popo Freitas.
Popo Freitas
is
is
the
like
guy.
that's like
Oh,
the
he was
list.
tough.
He was a
He was a
monster,
superstar.
son.
Raiders was tough.
He was a monster. They call him the Brazilian Floyd, right? Like that. He was to them. That was, I mean, and he was a puncher too.
He had a punch.
Good
That's
Lord.
the difference.
He was turning people's lights off and,
Yeah.
and pulling the plug. Sometimes it was like, goodness gracious, that. But you know a lot about that left hand. Come on, I'm over here. I'm on this side of the table for a reason. But also too, you know,
But it's
the
an
influence
untapped
of it,
market.
right?
It's an untapped
Yeah.
market. Obviously, we had a lot of success putting Whindersson on the November card. Whindersson's working with a fighter now that we signed. That's a two-time Olympian, Keno Marley.
Yeah.
You know, Keno is, you know, looks like a really special talent, and like I say, there for a large country that loves fighting and loves sports, there's got to be a little bit more room to develop boxing
Gotcha.
in that country, right?
Just to put a pin in it, you know, you talk about Whindersson Nunes. I think it's been, I don't know if it's been shared publicly yet, but we will feature some of these fights on his YouTube channel
Yeah.
on Saturday night, which is massive. Whindersson Nunes, a massive influencer in Brazil, actually fought Popo Freitas, which is,
Wow.
he's a psycho for doing, and Popo did not take it easy on him.
did.
Beat the crap out of him. I was like, all right, if that's how we're doing it. But
I think officially it was a draw, though.
yeah,
right?
yeah, officially a draw my butt. You had to draw a picture after it on the way to the hospital. But Whindersson is so supportive of Brazilian fighters and boxers, and this is just another awesome thing I think you guys are doing, allowing him to use some of this footage on his YouTube. How does that come about?
Yeah, and thanks to DAZN for seeing the vision too. So we're bringing in a Portuguese language broadcast team. So we're doing dual language broadcast. The event is going to be broadcast on Whindersson's YouTube channel, which is a casual 50 million subscribers.
No big deal.
Right.
No big deal.
So yeah, man. It's such an underdeveloped market from a boxing perspective. Obviously, MMA is massive in Brazil. I mean, soccer is massive in Brazil, but I feel like there's got to be some room to develop a boxing market, right? Especially with as many great amateur boxers as Brazil turns out.
Yeah.
You know, so we were saying the list for great pros is probably Popo Freitas, right? Beatriz Ferrer coming up, on the women's side, but there's got to be room to develop more and get more support from that community, and hopefully we're doing events in Brazil in the future.
There you go. Well, listen, that is Saturday right here at the Caribe Royale in Orlando. Gentlemen, I want a final thought from all the topics we talked about today. I'm going to put you on the spot again, Antonio. You got to help me out here. I want final predictions for our June 28th main event and our July 11th main event. Antonio, mainly from you, and I want a why as well. Jake Paul, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., who you got?
I got Jake Paul in that one.
Yeah.
He maybe, some ebb and flow rounds, maybe take a few to give a few. But I think at the end of the day, I think Jake Paul is going to have another impressive performance.
Then that July 11th card. Amanda Serrano, Katie Taylor, the trilogy, putting you on the spot. Who you got?
This time I'm going with Serrano, and I hope she don't have on those Jordans, because I think those slow her down a little bit.
They
in the
look
ring.
nice though, but
They
you gotta,
cute, but bro, let's get some flat surface on those shoes.
Amanda's wearing Jordans.
Oh,
Spoiler alert. She wears Jordans every
all
fight.
the time,
She's
right?
keeping it going. Yeah.
Okay.
I think I'll stay with my predictions as well. I think we're going to align there. Mike, I'll save you from that, obviously, as the director of boxing MVP. But make sure you guys tune in. Here this Saturday, DAZN live right here for Prospects 13. Then we have June 28th live from the Honda Center in Orange County, my backyard, which is awesome for me. I don't have to travel too much. And then obviously on Netflix, July 11th, you will see Amanda Serrano, Katie Taylor in the trilogy. For Wade Plemons, Mike Leonardi, and the great Antonio Tarver, this is the Boxing Lab. We'll see you next time.